5:12 a.m. Tuesday, March 14th, 2026. A residential street in Sugar Land, Texas, 12 miles southwest of downtown Houston. The air is 51 degrees. It has been raining since midnight. A black Bearcat armored vehicle idles without headlights at the corner of Magnolia Creek Drive and Industrial Spur 9. Behind it, 4 unmarked SUVs hold position, engines running. 14 DEA special agents and a 6-officer Houston PD SWAT element are staged on foot along the north wall of a beige commercial building that to anyone driving past looks exactly like what the sign above the door says it is. Riverside Family Mortuary and Cremation Services, established 1991. The lead entry agent keys his radio once. 2 clicks back, the stack moves. At 5:13 and 40 seconds, a Broco hydraulic ram contacts the steel-reinforced rear service door. 9 seconds. The door comes off its frame. Inside, under fluorescent light, 3 rows of caskets are staged on transport dollies, tagged with shipping manifest, destination labels, and official mortuary transfer paperwork. 17 caskets in total, all of them sealed. The agents do not open the caskets yet. That is not the entry team's job. Their job is to hold the room, clear the building, and secure whoever is inside. All 4 individuals present, 2 in the loading bay, 1 in a back office, 1 arriving in a van in the parking lot, are on the floor and in handcuffs within 90 seconds. Then the evidence team comes in. They bring a portable X-ray scanner, the kind airport cargo facilities use. They run it down the first row of caskets in under 4 minutes. The screen shows something that is not a body. The supervisor calls it in on a secure channel. The response from the DEA Houston Field Division duty officer is a single word: confirmed. Inside those 17 caskets, sealed in vacuum-wrapped bricks and packed around weighted steel armatures designed to mimic human remains on a scanner, are 412 kilograms of cocaine. But here is what will matter for the next 28 minutes of this story. The cocaine is almost secondary. What the agents are actually standing inside is the final physical chapter of an 18-month federal investigation into a money laundering and drug transport network that moved $94 million through 4 states while hiding inside one of the most legally protected, least inspected freight categories in the United States, the funeral industry. How do you build a cartel pipeline inside a mortuary? How does it run for years without triggering a single federal flag? And how does a junior analyst at a DEA regional office in San Antonio crack it open with a single anomaly on a spreadsheet? That is where this starts. 11 months before the raid, on April 9th, 2025, a financial intelligence analyst, we will call her Reyes, was running a routine cross-reference audit at the DEA's El Paso Intelligence Center, comparing interstate funeral transport billing records pulled from a Department of Transportation freight compliance database against regional industry benchmarks. The work was unglamorous. It was the kind of task that gets assigned to junior analysts on rotation. Cleaning data, flagging statistical outliers, writing summary memos that senior agents sometimes read and sometimes do not. Reyes had been in the role for 14 months. She had flagged 8 anomalies in that time, 7 resolved as administrative errors or seasonal variations. The 8th one did not resolve. Riverside Family Mortuary in Sugar Land, Texas, was billing for 31 cross-state human remains transport authorizations per month. The regional average for a single location mortuary of comparable size in the greater Houston metropolitan area was 9. Some larger operations hit 14 or 15 during peak months, winter when mortality rates climb. Riverside was hitting 31 month after month with remarkable consistency. Reyes ran the numbers back 18 months. The pattern held. She flagged it in a memo she titled "With Bureaucratic Economy, Transport Billing Anomaly, Riverside FM, Harris County TX." She forwarded it to her supervisor. Her supervisor forwarded it to the DEA Houston Field Division. For 6 weeks, nothing happened. Then a DEA group supervisor named Calderon in Houston pulled the memo off a backlog pile on a Friday afternoon, read it in 3 minutes, and made a phone call. "I need to know," he told his contact at the Texas Funeral Service Commission, whether Riverside has ever been audited. The answer was no. In 11 years of operation, Riverside Family Mortuary had never received a compliance audit from any state or federal agency. It had never generated a complaint. It had a clean Better Business Bureau record. It paid its taxes. It had a licensed funeral director on staff. By every available metric, it was an unremarkable small business operating in a niche that nobody at any oversight body had looked at closely. That 6-week gap between the memo and Calderon's phone call would become a footnote in the eventual indictment. A small operational delay in a case that would ultimately take 17 more months to build. One detail that stuck with me, going through the reconstruction of how this case developed. Reyes's original memo was 2 paragraphs long. The entire apparatus that followed, the wiretaps, the surveillance units, the financial forensics, the 38 indictments, every piece of it traces back to 2 paragraphs and a column of numbers that were 31 when they should have been 9. This is how it happened. May 2025. DEA Houston Field Division opens a preliminary inquiry under the working title Operation Hollow Ground. The initial team is small. Calderon, 2 senior special agents identified in case documents as Varga and Okonkwo, and a financial crimes analyst on loan from the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. They are not yet running a full investigation. They are running what agents call a development, trying to determine whether there is enough predication to justify the resource commitment of a full case. The first thing they do is pull Riverside's state licensure records, DOT freight authorizations, and Texas Department of Health human remains transport permits going back 5 years. What they find is consistent with Reyes's flag, but adds a layer. The receiving funeral homes for Riverside's out-of-state transports are clustered in 3 specific metro areas: Phoenix, Arizona, Las Vegas, Nevada, and the Los Angeles Basin. All 3 are known DEA priority corridors for Sinaloa cartel distribution. That is enough. Calderon authorizes the full investigation. He submits a Title III wiretap application to the Southern District of Texas. The application is approved in 8 days. By June 3, 2025, Operation Hollow Ground is running live wire intercepts on 3 phone lines connected to Riverside's owner and logistics manager, a man the investigation refers to in court documents by the alias the Director. They are also running a geofence warrant on 2 vehicles registered to shell companies that have been receiving payments from Riverside's business account. This is the point at which the case stops being about a billing anomaly and starts being about a network. Over the next 8 weeks, the wire produces 2,200 intercepted calls and messages. Most are mundane: scheduling, billing disputes, supplier invoices. But analysts begin to identify a pattern in the coded language used in roughly 60 of the communications. References to units, packages, and transport windows correlate precisely with the dates of Riverside's cross-state transfer filings. References to a contact identified only as the broker appear on every call that precedes a high-volume transport month. The broker is not located in Texas. On July 17, 2025, a cell site analysis places the broker's primary phone in the Culiacan metropolitan area of Sinaloa State, Mexico. Calderon briefs the case upward. Within 2 weeks, DEA's Special Operations Division is coordinating with the DEA country office in Guadalajara and the HSI attaché at the U.S. Consulate in Monterrey. This is no longer a Houston field office matter. It is a transnational case. What surprises me most about this case is not the cocaine in the caskets. It is the financial architecture underneath. The drug loads were almost the visible layer. The real operation was $94 million in laundered proceeds moving through the mortuary's billing infrastructure. Here is how the financial pipeline worked. Riverside would receive a drug shipment. Cocaine transported across the southern border through a separate smuggling channel, typically in commercial produce freight. The load would be repackaged at the mortuary. Bricks were vacuum sealed, weighted, and positioned inside caskets alongside or in place of human remains. In some cases, actual deceased individuals were transported in the same casket, the drug load concealed beneath the body lining. The caskets were then shipped under legitimate human remains transfer documentation. Documentation that, under federal and state regulations, cannot be opened or inspected by commercial freight carriers without the explicit authorization of a licensed funeral director. This is a legal protection designed to preserve the dignity of the deceased and the privacy of grieving families. It was, for this network, the single most valuable regulatory feature in the American death care system. At the receiving end, funeral homes in Phoenix, Las Vegas, and the LA Basin, associates would accept the shipment, extract the drug load, and pass it to local distribution cells. The receiving funeral homes were not full participants. In most cases, a single corrupt employee at each location handled the handoff. The drug proceeds then moved backward through 3 layers of shell companies: a logistics firm registered in Nevada, a funeral supply wholesaler incorporated in Delaware, and a property management entity in Arizona. By the time the money reached Riverside's operating account, it looked like legitimate business income. Transport fees, storage fees, cremation supply purchases, embalming chemical invoices. All of it documented, all of it plausible, all of it false. Most people assume that money laundering at this scale requires offshore accounts and cryptocurrency. It did not. This network ran almost entirely through domestic business accounts at 3 regional banks, using invoice fraud so ordinary that it cleared automated compliance filters for 2 full years. Think about what an IRS analyst sees in this picture. A small Texas mortuary with steady revenue growth, clean tax filings, and a diversified client base. Nothing in the numbers, in isolation, tells you anything is wrong. The anomaly only appears when you stack them against industry benchmarks across a region. And nobody had built that comparison tool until Reyes ran her audit in April 2025. By September 2025, the DEA had mapped the full network. They had identified 31 individuals with prosecutable ties to the conspiracy. They had documented what their financial forensics team estimated at $62 million in laundered proceeds. They had a case they could take to a grand jury. Calderon held. The reason he held was what The Wire was starting to show about a second parallel operation. In late August 2025, intercepted communications between the director and the broker began referencing a new channel, a second mortuary in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, being acquired through a front company. If the network successfully stood up a second location, it would double its transport capacity and split investigative attention across 2 metro areas. Calderon made the call to wait, continue surveillance, and let the second location develop until they could roll it into the same indictment. That decision added 5 months to the investigation. It also nearly destroyed it. On October 22, 2025, The Wire went dark. Not a technical failure. A deliberate counter-surveillance move. At 11:14 p.m., all 3 monitored phone lines associated with the director went simultaneously inactive. New numbers did not appear. A previously identified associate, the logistics manager at Riverside, referred to in court documents as the coordinator, stopped using his registered vehicle and switched to cash-paid rideshares. A physical surveillance team following the coordinator lost visual contact in a parking structure in downtown Houston at 12:51 a.m. on October 23rd. For 72 hours, Operation Hollow Ground was effectively blind. That was a serious problem. If the director had been tipped off, if someone inside the investigation or connected to the legal process had passed information, the entire 18-month operation could collapse in a weekend. Calderon convened an emergency session. The team reviewed every person who had touched the case paperwork. They ran a communications audit on every authorized recipient of the Title III intercept data. They contacted the Southern District Courthouse to review access logs on the wiretap application filing. Nothing surfaced. No leak was found. On October 26th, new phone numbers appeared in the network's communications pattern, identified through a separate cell site warrant that had been running in parallel, tracking towers rather than specific devices. The director had simply rotated numbers. A standard counter-surveillance practice the network apparently ran on a roughly 60-day cycle. The Wire was back up by October 28th, 5 days of operational blindness. What the team found when they re-established coverage was more significant than what they had lost. The director, apparently satisfied that the rotation was clean, was communicating more directly about the Dallas acquisition. By November 14, 2025, agents had enough on the second location to include it in the conspiracy count. The second mortuary, called in case documents Site 2, operating as a funeral home in Lewisville, Texas, northwest of Dallas, had processed its first drug transport on November 6th, 9 days before the DEA fully documented it. The case was expanding faster than the calendar Calderon had planned around. We spent weeks going through the Wire intercept logs, and one detail kept coming back. The director never discussed the drug loads directly. Not once in 2,200 intercepted communications does he mention narcotics, cocaine, kilograms, or cartel contacts by name. The coded language is surgical. 31 transport units is 31 kilos. A full service package is a maximum load casket. The broker is always the partner or the supplier. The financial structure is discussed only in terms of service fees and logistics costs. It is the language of a man who has thought carefully about what a federal prosecutor can use. And yet here is the part that doesn't quite add up. For all that operational security discipline, the network kept routing its wire transfers through the same 3 banks, using the same accounting categories month after month. The counter-surveillance on phones was sophisticated. The financial footprint was not. That contradiction, careful on communications, careless on money, is what the IRS analyst team eventually used to reconstruct the $94 million figure. Here is a take that will probably draw some disagreement. The banking compliance system failed here, and it failed systemically. 3 banks processed 2 years of suspicious transaction volume from a single location mortuary without a single suspicious activity report reaching federal investigators. The network did not outsmart the compliance system. The compliance system simply was not watching. Blaming the cartel is easy. The harder question is why 3 federally regulated financial institutions cleared this volume without a flag, and whether anyone at those institutions faces accountability for it. By January 2026, Operation Hollow Ground had grown to involve 6 federal agencies. DEA-led. FBI's Financial Crimes Unit contributed forensic accountants. HSI provided transnational coordination. IRS Criminal Investigation handled the money laundering counts. The U.S. Marshal Service was pre-positioned for fugitive recovery. And the Southern District of Texas U.S. Attorney's Office had been managing grand jury proceedings since November. The grand jury returned a sealed indictment on February 11, 2026. 38 counts across 4 conspiracy charges, 22 defendants in Texas, 8 in Arizona, 5 in Nevada, 3 in California. The indictment was sealed to protect the operation. The plan was to execute coordinated arrests across all 4 states on a single morning. Simultaneous takedowns to prevent any defendant from fleeing on news of the other's arrest. That plan hit its second major obstacle 4 days before the raid. On March 10, 2026, a physical surveillance team watching Site 2 in Louisville observed 2 individuals loading what appeared to be transport caskets into a refrigerated freight truck. Not a licensed funeral transport vehicle, but a commercial refrigerated carrier of the kind used to move food products. The caskets were manifested as medical waste for contracted cremation services, a category that, like human remains transfers, is largely exempt from freight inspection under federal DOT regulations. The network was moving product early. Something had shifted in their timeline. Calderon faced a decision: move the raid forward and risk an incomplete sweep, or hold and risk losing a shipment, and potentially losing the defendants who moved with it. He called the Southern District U.S. Attorney at 9:47 p.m. on March 10th. The conversation lasted 11 minutes. The decision at the end of it: move everything forward 72 hours. New raid date, March 14th, 2026. The coordination required to compress a 4-state simultaneous arrest operation by 3 days. Rebriefing SWAT elements, resetting surveillance windows, reissuing arrest warrant timing to marshals in 3 jurisdictions, ran through the weekend without a break. What do you think? When a network that careful makes a last-minute move, does that signal they knew something? Or is it just operational variance? Drop your answer in the comments. It is a question the post-arrest debrief never fully resolved. March 14th, 2026. 5 a.m. Eastern, 5 a.m. Central, 4 a.m. Mountain, 3 a.m. Pacific. 17 teams moved simultaneously. In Sugar Land, Texas, the Bearcat rolls. 14 DEA agents, 6 SWAT officers. The rear door of Riverside Family Mortuary takes 9 seconds. In Louisville, Texas, a second DEA entry team hits Site 2 at the same moment. 2 individuals in the loading bay are taken into custody. 41 additional kilograms of cocaine are found in a casket in the preparation room. In Phoenix, Arizona, HSI agents execute arrest warrants at 2 addresses. Both subjects are in custody by 5:19 a.m. Mountain. In Las Vegas, Nevada, U.S. Marshals and DEA make 3 arrests at a single residence. One subject attempts to flee through a rear exit. He is taken down in the alley by a Marshals fugitive team that has been holding position there since 4:45 a.m. In the Los Angeles Basin, Torrance, California, 2 arrests are made at a commercial storage facility. Inside the facility, in a climate-controlled unit maintained at 62 degrees Fahrenheit, agents find $11 million in bundled cash. The bills are stacked in moving boxes, labeled holiday decor and wrapped in contractor-grade plastic. The weight of the cash alone exceeds 400 pounds. By 6:03 a.m. Central, all 38 indicted individuals are either in federal custody or confirmed located for imminent arrest. The one individual who had not been taken by that time, a logistics associate in Henderson, Nevada, is in custody by 7:22 a.m., located at a relative's address that a Marshals intelligence analyst had flagged as a secondary residence 48 hours earlier. 0 officer injuries, 0 shots fired, 38 for 38. The numbers from Operation Hollow Ground are unambiguous. 412 kilograms of cocaine seized across 2 Texas locations. $11 million in cash recovered from a single storage unit in Torrance, California. $94 million in laundered proceeds documented across a 4-state financial network, the largest funeral industry money laundering case in DEA history. 38 individuals facing federal charges under Title 21 and Title 18 conspiracy counts. The network's primary operator, the director, faces a sentencing exposure of 40 years under federal mandatory minimums. The broker, operating from Sinaloa, Mexico, is the subject of an active international extradition request. Site 2 in Lewisville, Texas, processed its first illicit transport on November 6, 2025. It operated for 128 days before agents shut it down. In that time, it moved an estimated 60 additional kilograms of cocaine and generated approximately $4 million in laundered proceeds. The 3 shell companies through which the network routed its financial traffic are dissolved under civil forfeiture proceedings. The 3 regional banks whose compliance systems missed 2 years of suspicious activity have received formal notification from FinCEN. No bank-level charges have been filed as of this recording. And the regulatory gap that made all of it possible, the federal and state exemptions that protect human remains transfers from freight inspection, remains in place. The legal framework has not changed. The exemption that the director exploited for 2 years, billing for 31 transport authorizations a month when the regional average was 9, is still the law. Reyes, the analyst whose 2-paragraph memo started all of this, has since been promoted to a senior intelligence analyst position at the El Paso Intelligence Center. The promotion is noted in DEA internal communications reviewed for this reconstruction. It is not a headline, it is a footnote. There is a line in the indictment that reads almost like fiction. Count 14 charges that the conspiracy exploited the dignity protections afforded to the deceased under federal and state transportation regulations in order to facilitate the movement of controlled substances. The dignity protections, that is the legal phrase. The network used the legal protection that exists to preserve the dignity of the dead as its primary smuggling mechanism. We track what comes next. Subscribe to the Bureau files so the next case finds you first. Here is the question the DEA's post-seizure assessment does not answer, because it cannot. Riverside operated for at least 3 years before Reyes ran her audit. In those 3 years, 31 transport authorizations a month. If the regional average is 9, that is 22 unexplained transports per month. Over 36 months, that is nearly 800 transport events that nobody looked at. Not every anomaly hides a cartel, but some of them do. And the freight categories that receive the least inspection because of regulatory protection, because of cultural deference, because of bureaucratic inertia, are exactly the categories that sophisticated networks exploit first. The cocaine is seized, the cash is in federal custody, the network is gone. But somewhere right now, in a city you have probably been to, a small business is billing for a volume of something that nobody has thought to compare against a regional benchmark. Comment yes if you think this loophole gets closed in the next 5 years, or no if you think regulatory deference to sensitive freight categories is too politically complicated to touch. We read every comment. The $11 million pulled from that torrent storage unit has been photographed, logged, and transferred to a federal evidence facility. 400 pounds of cash in moving boxes labeled holiday decor. The holiday decor is now Exhibit 47.